Hey everyone, and how's it going? BowserTheHealer here, and let's talk Mythic Plus. How can we make Mythic Plus even better? I think Mythic Plus is actually one of the coolest things in gaming. Co-op speedrunning with your friends through dungeons with infinite difficulty. It's kind of tantalizing, but on the same end, we all know some of the problems that can come up, especially those involving Tyrannical and Fortified, the affixes, and more. I'm going to actually talk about other affixes in a different video. Today, I'm going to talk about Tyrannical and Fortified and other ideas that would make Mythic Plus a bit better, both for the competitive nature, that esports side of competitive top-level pushing, all the way to more casual approachability with Keystones. That being said, if you like healing content or just like listening to me rant about World of Warcraft, hit the subscribe button. It means a lot to me, and let's dive right on in. So to the uninformed, real quick, Fortified and Tyrannical are the 2 weeks of Mythic Plus. You're always going to have one. It usually goes Tyrannical, then it goes Fortified, and then back and forth forever as the other affixes change. Fortified reads that non-boss enemies have 20% more health and inflict up to 30% increased damage, and Tyrannical reads that bosses have 30% more health and bosses and their minions inflict up to 15% increased damage. The damage component's actually a bit of the problem here, because Tyrannical and Fortified, I believe by design, were probably meant to make the routes different. So where you send your lust and what kind of pulls you go for will change depending on whether it's Tyrannical or Fortified. And I think that's fine by default, but it's the damage that really causes problem, because there's this theoretical limit, right? Where you're going to eventually get one shot by the game. But Tyrannical and Fortified make certain elements of the dungeon start one-shotting you sooner. You'll need to build compositions that can specifically survive those instances, or can do enough damage to avoid having to use too many defensives to the point where you cannot survive any longer. And while that is interesting to hit that theoretical limit, we often hit it a little too quickly these days, and players are stuck in a position where the dungeon's just one-shot. You see Automatic Jack's video on one-shots if you would like to hear even more about this. So how can we make Fortified and Tyrannical better? You could just remove the damage component, which I think would help, but I have another suggestion. What if instead they worked a little differently? I'm really inspired by Season 3 Shadowlands relics. There were these little, they look like balloons to me because they sometimes were attached to mobs, but you would take out one of 3 balloons and summon a mini boss. Killing that mini boss rewarded a specific buff, and you could use this to change the way you routed the dungeon, did your damage, or restored cooldowns. It was incredibly neat, and I really like what it brought to the table. So what if Fortified had special mobs that would buff the pack itself? I don't want inspiring it to ever come back, but what if they made things require a double kick or increased cast speed, or made things a little more durable, or gave out periodic shields? But when you took out this mob, whether it was thematic to the dungeon or thematic to the season, it provided a buff, and different packs would provide different buffs, allowing players to pick a route that would suit their group's needs. And I think that would be fun. Giving agency to the player does a lot for dungeons, and I think that'd make Fortified more interesting. Instead of things just being arbitrarily harder, make them unique, more interesting. And same with Tyrannical. Now, if you're designing a new dungeon, you could create phases that only existed on Tyrannical weeks. So what if a boss got to its 3rd mechanic and then a new 4th mechanic happened? That'd be really neat, especially if it had a kiss curse effect where, again, you solve the mechanic or you survive the thing, you get a buff for it, or you get a damage phase or something. But because Mythic Plus likes to draw from older dungeons as well, it might be a good idea to potentially bosses have an ad that shows up and provides an additional mechanic that, again, when you take out that ad, it provides that kiss curse, you've defeated the bad thing, here, have a good thing. Especially given that if we just remove the damage component, maybe let them keep a little bit of the health component and added new mechanics, it would make, I think, dungeons a bit more fun rather than being discouragingly overpowered, because no one likes going into a dungeon being like, oh, I gotta do Everbloom on Tyrannical. I've heard that so many times. Hopefully something like that could help, and hopefully this inspires the devs to come up with some ideas to make that a bit more fun. And speaking of fun, you know what isn't fun? Your Keystone dropping. And I think this is an outdated mechanic. When your Keystone fails, it drops a level. What if you have a lever or somebody disconnects? It just sucks that now your 20 Waycrest is a 19 Waycrest. So if you were trying to get that portal, and now you got to go find somebody else's 20 Waycrest, or you have to run your key up back to a 20 and then get it back to Waycrest. And that's a lot of work for not a lot of reward. What if instead, when you get that 20 Waycrest, you can select any difficulty in like that is over what you've cleared. So you've done the 20, let's say, that means you could select 19 all the way down to 2. Furthermore, it'll also let you select 21, the keystone that you're challenging next. So if you've cleared a 24 Tal'Dazar, you are challenging the 25. And then on top of that, let us run the keystone back. Now, maybe you don't want to give full rewards after the second or the third run. I get that, but let us go for score. Let us try to improve our time, fix any mistakes, and go again a little bit faster. Because letting players run it back would be good for not only new players who are trying to figure out their first +7, right? And maybe they barely failed a key and they need to figure out what they could do to improve their time and how they could play it better. Yeah, let them try it one more time. And you know what? Reward them with one more chance at loot before, you can't get loot from the key anymore. That'd be fine. And what about the top level players that are trying to push that 31? Can we clear that 31? Well, instead of them having to wait hours for somebody's key to re-roll back to a 31, you just let them run it back. It might make solving the dungeons a bit easier, but I feel like players want that. They want to spend time in there and actually practice and see what they can learn about these dungeons so that when they get to a high level keystone, they can run it. But I feel like we need more competition in keystones as well. So let's talk about challenge mode. The Diablo 3 challenge mode was super fun. I like the idea of getting set gear and all of your stuff handed to you, and then you have to go do the thing efficiently. What if you allowed players to go in with their own talents, hand them gear with maybe some swaps for stat weights, and then parties can just go at the challenge key? You could have 2 difficulties too, like an easy mode and a hard mode. That way you're only trying to balance for 2 different difficulties. And then furthermore, make it about leaderboards and time, and maybe make it bi-weekly or make it monthly. You have a whole month to challenge this and climb the leaderboards if you like. I think that'd be really cool. I don't know how you'd want to handle rewards, but a challenge mode like that for, a special little bonus would not only allow players who are undergeared to see what they could do with the correct stat weights and let them really practice, but it would allow players to try more competitive strategies. They might see top teams post these cool routes where you can do something, and in a low risk environment, hey, why don't we try tanking it like that and seeing how much damage we can do? It'd be encouraging. Let players try something in a low risk environment. And speaking of competition, the other thing I really want to suggest is a rating for how fast you go. I don't want Raider IO to change. I don't want Raider IO to go away at all, but I would love to get like a Devil May Cry style letter grade for how fast I go into dungeon. We already know dungeon times up to 3 decimal places, which is crazy. So why not utilize that time? I would love to know how I ranked against other groups on speed with a letter grade. Like, oh, you just did a 20 at Tal'Dazar and you got a B rank. Oh, that's pretty good. You got a D rank. All right, you know what? I'll take it, but we made it through the dungeon. That's the part I'm more happy about. And then you get something like an S rank, that special little, and that's like top 3%. And there's a double and a triple S for when you're in that top 1% range. And then of course, maybe a grand 100 that you are the top 1 group in a dungeon. And do it for every keystone level too. People are going to have competitions for 2s. People are going to want to push all S ranks on 20s. And I think that sounds like a lot of fun. I think encouraging people to run keys back and go faster would really add to the competition. And you don't need to have titles for it. You don't need to give out gear for it. You don't need to change a thing about the current systems. Just show people how well they did, how fast they went, and let them run it back, and you create competition. I mean, I come from the speedrunning community. It's sort of how I started my streaming career, and I just play Monkey Ball in Odyssey all the time, constantly posting new times, constantly doing new runs. And whether I was resetting partway through because the run went bad, or I was on a world record pace and your heart's racing, it's so much fun. And I think that fun exists in things such as the MDI, but it's not very accessible. You have to be on Tournament Realm, you have to do the qualifiers. And while anyone can sign up, it's not necessarily an accessible form of that competition, but seeing the rating and knowing how well you're doing would just give you the thought of, oh, I could go faster. Or, whoa, that run was really close to being a little too slow. That kind of adds to the emphasis of the importance of time, or the unimportance of time, and how much fun it is to see how much quicker you can go. I'd love to see changes like this, and I'd also like to see more competition around time and around challenges in Mythic Plus. And even in Raid, I'd love to see some speed clears and whatnot, and just see who can go the fastest, because there's so much here that you can do to optimize and to get good at World of Warcraft. I want to see more of that expressed through the way we play. So let me know in the comment section, what kind of changes do you want to see to Mythic Plus? And what kind of things would make it more fun for you, whether you're a casual or a hardcore player that loves to push? I'd love to know. And of course, if you have any issues with the affixes, feel free to sound off about them, because I will be making that affix video. And trust me, we can talk all day about afflicted and bolstering. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.